Hello, welcome to the sideboard here at the StarCityGames.com Standard Open in Baltimore. I am Nick Miller alongside Brad Nelson, of course. Who else do we talk to in week one of new Standard?
It's been a while, it has, but this one is a little bit more new than Esper Dragons of old. So
Right.
Played Esper Dragons last time we were here, so you didn't really want to do any tech on that one.
Week one of a new Standard format, Christmas morning for everyone here in the Magic world. Who else to talk to about Standard than you, of course? And the Roanoke team, you know, you guys don't really have like a team name or whatever, but there's a bunch of you guys over there. You all work together.
Yeah.
You've come up with this black-white, mid-rangey, Eldrazi themed deck, basically.
Yeah, it definitely is not the first version. This wasn't the initial brainchild, but we had variants of Westfell Abbey, Secure the Waste, Gideon decks, and it slowly became this when we were seeing the powerful aspects of it. So this was just a ton of testing. And the one awesome thing is, like, this time around, the entire group, everyone that does versus videos, Tom, Todd, Majors, Miriam, forgot Miriam's name. Jerry and I, we just got together and just were testing a ton in the last week, 2 weeks actually. And so, like, this deck got so much play testing before we got here.
Now, before we get into the deck, you say you guys have been doing a lot of testing. How many decks do you think you guys probably seriously test? Not just saying, you know, come up with an idea. How many decks do you seriously test? And, you know, where does this deck's rank in a comparison? And kind of, are you hiding anything, or is this what you think the best deck for this week is?
This is the best deck for this week. We definitely had a lot of different decks, but the thing about it is, without a metagame to go off of, you just keep evolving decks really quickly because you just try a bunch of new things and they don't really work. And so the decks were constantly evolving, and so it's difficult to say, like, we tested a bunch of things extensively, because you would get to, like, for example, I built like a black-green Tireless Tracker mid-range deck, and the deck was great, but it was one-dimensional, and this deck was better than that. So I kind of dismissed it, because that's the kind of deck that you're going to want to figure out what removal you actually want to cast, and if you need to, how big in the format you have to go. And without knowing those things, I don't really want to take it week one, whereas this deck is just so many threats. It doesn't look like a deck that's going to continue in the format. It might for a couple weeks until things slow down, we understand the removals matching up with all the threats. But for week one, we thought it was by far the best deck that we had.
All right, so we've got a black-white Eldrazi deck. You love Knight of the White Orchids, so it's no surprise to see creature right here.
I didn't build this deck. I didn't. Jerry Thompson was the first person to build it, and I even said I wanted to cut a Knight, and he's like, no, we're not cutting a Knight, so it's not my fault.
All right, I'll buy it for now. You got Eiley here, a card that we saw, you know, pre-rotation, but now it looks very good in this deck because you got a lot of synergies. We'll go over, of course, the Eldrazi package. You got Thought-Knot Seer, Eldrazi Displacer, and Matter Reshaper, along with Hedron Crawler to help you kind of accelerate your threats out. But I remember you talking to me, you said where this deck really took off was once you discovered how powerful the Displacer was in this deck. And we saw that even in Modern, when everyone realized the blue-white Eldrazi deck was how you go in that format.
Yeah, and Displacer, we know that in Modern it was very powerful because it was really good in the mirrors, but once you get rid of Rally and you get rid of these combo really fast starts, the hyper removal decks that were old Standard, Displacer just shines because it deals with tokens, it deals with Westfell Abbey's Ormondal, it deals with Hang Your Back Walkers, with excess mana. Even if you're not doing something with your come into play triggers, you're able to interact with them to the point where they can't really attack profitably or block profitably. You just get to take over the game as long as Eldrazi Displacer's in play, and it becomes the biggest threat when you even have an Avacyn or Thought-Knot Seer. They just have to deal with it, but the card interacts favorably with Thought-Knot Seers being able to blink during their upkeep to be like a pseudo Vendilion Clique. Even though they draw a card, you can stack it to have them draw then look. Avacyn, obviously, blinking it to get indestructible, so Chandra doesn't really do much to the board. You can flip your Avacyn and then trigger to deal 3 to everything to flip it back to keep your board alive. And even Gideon animating attack for 5, blinking, and then making a 2/2 Knight ally is powerful. So the card does so many different things in the deck.
Yeah, it really seems like the Swiss Army knife of this deck. It just kind of can pull duty everywhere. Just the shenanigans you're doing with Archangel. Now, I know you've been hyping this card all the way. and you said you were definitely going to play a deck week 1 with Avacyn.
Yeah, I mean, I've done this before in new formats where I don't just play like the really difficult to understand card like Restoration Angel. I knew it was fine, but I didn't want to play it. But Avacyn, it just hits you over their head and says the entire game changes because you have Avacyn in your deck. You can bluff it. You can. It just makes combat difficult for your opponent even if they know you have it. It's an end of turn threat that hits really hard. It makes other combat, like you can attack a knight into a 3/3 because if they block, you flip your Avacyn and kill their 3/3 anyway. So it's a trade. So you're getting free damage through. It's hard to attack into. Even with bigger creatures, you can just chump block. The card is very powerful, going to be part of standard. Maybe not just in this deck, but like I said, this is just our week 1 strategy.
Right. Also, a little synergy I'm noticing, I'm sure you're aware of, is the Eiley can kind of get you to flip Avacyn whenever you want after the fact of it coming in and doing the indestructible.
Yeah, and Eiley can do that, and it is a play that you can make. But Eiley is also just a very early threat that has Death Touch, so they have to trade with it. They're trying to beat you down, which is one of the weaker, like one of the ways to actually beat this deck. Because if the games go super long, it's really tough to beat cards like Displacer and Avacyn and Gideon, Sorin. So you want to make sure that you're not dying in the early turns, and that's what Eiley, Declaration of Stone, and Ultimate Price do.
Right. So your removal package, Declaration of Stone, just an all-star card we see out of Shadows over Innistrad. Ultimate Price, you got to have something at 2-drop to go along with it. And then the card that seemed, a lot of discussion, Anguish Unmaking, a lot of people said, the 3 life is too much to give up for that. Shaheen Sarani said, it's like Phyrexian mana almost. You kind of just have to play the card despite the life loss.
Yeah, I mean, it's just too good. It's instant speed. It can deal with problematic permanents like Goggles, Sphinx's Tutelage. It doesn't matter. Like get Planeswalkers, creatures. It deals with Avacyn at instant speed, which is needed. It's just too good. And we're playing 2 copies. I wanted a third in the sideboard, but we decided against it. And it's just a good answer catch-all. And the 3 life is relevant when it's relevant, but life totals are the least relevant resource until you're out of them. So being able to deal with a matter or like a Reality Smasher, something like that, or a Sorin that's sticking up, like not having an actual answer to a Planeswalker is like one of the reasons why green-white is worse than black-white. And so you just have to play the card even if you lose 3 life. It's not a big deal.
Mentioned a lot in the conversation already. Sorin, Grim Nemesis. This is a card, 6 mana. A lot of people immediately want to try to compare it. Well, where does it fit in terms of Elspeth Sun's Champion? It's the same cost, obviously a different card, but people are, when you're wanting to play a 6 mana Planeswalker, it has to be very good. Yeah,
I mean, Magic is such a tough game, and trying to compare Planeswalkers at the same converted mana cost is a little weird to me because it's what decks you're putting in, what it's trying to do in that archetype. Sorin's not trying to be an Elspeth. It's not trying to wrath the board. It's not trying to gum up the board. It's trying to make sure you have answers to Planeswalkers, be some stream of life, and as well as just generate a decent amount of advantage when the board is stable. So you're not going to just play 4-3 Sorins to just win the game with. You have to build your deck with other things to win the game. It's just a good, clean answer to all the Planeswalkers, which is why it's in the deck.
Okay, so you really need an answer to the Planeswalkers.
Yeah.
That card is where you want to be.
But Gideon, still stay in play.
Right. Gideon, of course, a card that's very good. People said it kind of lost value coming into this set, but still looks really good in this type of deck.
So Gideon, it has lost a little bit. I tried starting a lot of decks with Avacyn, Gideon, and Hangerback, like we did last format. And the cool thing about Avacyn Hangerback is sometimes if you just play it at end of turn and they tap out and they don't have instant speed removal, or you don't think they do, you can just, or they tap out on their turn, you can play an Avacyn on your turn 5 and just pitch a Hangerback to flip it. Just cast it for 0. And I started trying those decks, but the Gideons were always just stuck in my hand because the boards are clumping up. There's a lot of powerful effects. I would usually just like keep it as the last card and then emblem it, and it might have been good or not. So we're playing 2 because it's still a powerful card. Good against mid-range decks, good against control, good on the play, sometimes good as the last card, but it's not something you want to ever have 2 of in your hand.
Okay.
Especially since you can blink it with Displacer. You don't even need to go emblem make one.
Sure. You can do anything you want as long as you got the Displacer engine going. Sideboard, you got, again, you said the new Gideon, or an extra Gideon.
Yep.
You got a bunch of discard between Duress, Transgress the Mind, but we have Tragic Arrogance, is a card we saw pop up at the very end of, the Abzan mid-range, when that deck was dominant. You got a bunch of copies of this. And it seems like you need to when you can kind of have a bunch of decks just kind of building up a massive board.
Yeah, and that's really what happens in the first couple weeks of a standard format is we don't really know what's going to be good, but one of the good things that you can do in the format is go wider, go bigger, go stronger than other people. And I could say like the green-black Krites decks were a concern, maybe like some Planeswalker, like green-white go wide, Abby decks. But the real reason I play Tragic Arrogance is it's so easy to go bigger than your opponents, go wider, as well as it's good against Red Eldrazi. But once the format slows down, we understand it, the mid-range decks get better, we're going to start seeing more Languishes or Sylvan Advocates or Tireless Trackers, maybe even Mindbreak Demons, like more mid-range where Tragic Arrogance isn't going to be good. Decks aren't going to be trying to put a lot of threats on the board, but we just don't know which answers are good yet. So Tragic Arrogance is this catch-all. A lot of people also like to do these white decks splashing blue with always watching Ojutai, which is a hard thing to beat, but Tragic Arrogance just dominates it.
Right. Yeah, we saw we didn't get to see it due to technical difficulties, but your round 1 loss did come to,
not drawing Tragic Arrogance.
The white-blue humans deck, and then you didn't have the answer to the, never tapping Ojutai, which can be a problem. More Eiley here on the board, a Reality Smasher, Read the Bones is card advantage. To round out the deck tech, where do you see the format going? You've got a couple of rounds of new standard under your belt. You're kind of seeing a few decks now. We're seeing a lot of the white-blue humans deck, and then your guys' team is on this deck.
I don't know yet. It's too early to tell.
The people want answers, Brad.
I'm starting to see certain cards be good in the format. Avacyn's clearly good. Jace is looking a little bit weaker. These human decks look like they might stay. But it's tough. Magic is a cyclical game, and we aren't going to really get a good snapshot in the first 2 weeks. And like the Invitational, the Pro Tour, these things are going to solidify a format for people, and then it's going to slowly evolve from there and keep wrapping around on itself. So I think that this is a very good strategy in the first couple of weeks, especially once we get some data from this tournament to figure out which cards we didn't actually need and which cards we do. But to say where the format's going, I can say everywhere, because most formats do go lots of places, and maybe there's an Abzan deck that we don't know about. Or a 4-color rally. We don't know. Krites could be unbelievable. So I'm excited, as always, to just keep up with evolving the format and trying to stay one step ahead of everyone. And I think for this week, the Roanoke crew really pulled their weight, tested a bunch, and we found a deck that is awesome against week 1 strategies. But the more we play it, the more I feel like this might just be some type of strategy, because Displacer is busted. You're going to see it playing a lot more. And that's the heart of the deck, the best card in the deck, and it's going to see many more homes than just this.
All right, well, thanks for joining me here in the sideboard.
Anytime.
Everyone at home, enjoy the Standard Master here, Brad Nelson, telling you all you need to know in week 1 of Shadows over Innistrad Standard.